The more we study it, the less sense it makes. For billions of years, the sky was silent. Our comets circled the sun. Our asteroids followed the same loops. Everything was bound here, predictable. And then, suddenly, the silence broke. In 2017, Oumuamua appeared. At first, just a faint dot moving across the sky, but it was too fast. Its orbit was hyperbolic. It wasn't one of ours. It had come from elsewhere, and it would never return. A shard tumbling end over end, long, thin, reflecting sunlight in strange flashes. 2 years later came Borisov, a comet this time, a long, glowing tail trailing behind it. But its chemistry was unusual. Too much carbon monoxide, more than any comet in our neighborhood. Natural, perhaps, but not familiar. And then, in July 2025, the Atlas survey in Hawaii found a third, a small point of light in the constellation of Microscopium. At first, nothing unusual, but the numbers told a different story. It was inbound from Sagittarius, outbound toward Eridanus. Its velocity, 26 kilometers per second. Its orbit again was open, hyperbolic, not bound to the sun. The name was formal, 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever recorded. But what unsettled astronomers wasn't only its speed or its path, it was the pattern. 3 interstellar visitors in less than a decade. After billions of years of silence, suddenly a sequence. On paper, there's an explanation. The galaxy is full of fragments, shards of broken planets, pieces of shattered comets. Over time, some were bound to pass through. If we watched long enough, we would see them. Perhaps these 3 were nothing more than chance. Random wanderers, noticed only because our instruments had finally become sharp enough. But the timing feels heavy. Oumuamua, Borisov, Atlas. Each one stranger than the last. Each one arriving just as we were ready to find them. The silence stretched for eons. And then, suddenly, 3 in quick succession. Coincidence? Maybe. But perhaps not, because patterns matter. And sometimes a pattern feels too sharp to be chance. Sometimes it feels like intent. 3 in less than 10 years, after all the centuries of nothing. Accident or design, coincidence or choreography. That is where the story begins. Astronomers tried to explain it. 3 visitors in such a short span. Maybe it was just chance. The galaxy is full of fragments. Comets break apart. Planets collide. Shards are thrown into the dark between stars. If enough of them exist, some must eventually wander through our skies. That was the logic. On paper, it holds, statistically possible, but something about it still feels strange. For billions of years, we saw nothing. The skies gave us silence. Then suddenly, 3. Oumuamua in 2017, Borisov in 2019, Atlas in 2025. The sequence feels heavy, like timing, and timing matters. Oumuamua's shape and strange light curve, Borisov's unusual chemistry, Atlas flashing with steady rhythm as it rotated. Each one carried something odd. Each one stirred suspicion. Alone they could be dismissed. Together they form a pattern. Patterns whisper meaning. They make us wonder if coincidence is only another word for what we don't yet understand. The math says 3 in a decade is possible, but the math doesn't explain why now. Why after centuries of nothing, they appeared just as our instruments sharpen, just as our surveys watch the skies more closely than ever. It could be luck, it could be statistics at work, or it could be something more deliberate. Coincidence, or choreography. Accident, or intent. 3 interstellar objects, 3 puzzles, 3 questions that lead only to more questions. Because if this was not random, then what is it? Is someone sending fragments on purpose? Is there a message written in their timing, their chemistry, their silence? Or are we only imagining order where none exists? Astronomers debate it quietly. The data is clear. Hyperbolic orbits, interstellar speeds, outbound paths that will never return. The interpretation is less clear. Numbers do not always tell us the whole story. Perhaps they are only rocks, perhaps nothing at all. But perhaps 3 in less than a decade, after all that silence, is too sharp to ignore. And if it is too sharp, then it suggests something else. That someone, or something, wanted to be noticed. 3 visitors in 10 years. The more you say it, the stranger it feels. For billions of years, silence. Then, suddenly, a sequence, one after another, each unique, each unsettling. Oumuamua was the first, long, thin, tumbling. It reflected light in flashes, bright, then dim, bright, then dim. The pattern suggested rotation, but the way it slowed down as it left, that was harder to explain. A push with no tail, no gas, no engine, just motion that didn't quite fit. Borisov was the second. It was easier to classify. Clearly a comet, a glowing tail, streaming like others we had seen. But its composition raised questions. More carbon monoxide than expected, too much, as though it came from a place colder than anything near us, a world we have never seen. And then Atlas, the third, another point of light, its speed, its path, its open orbit, all confirmed quickly. But it carried a rhythm too, flashes of brightness, regular, steady, almost like a pulse. The kind of signal that tempts the imagination. One object like this could be dismissed, 2 could still be coincidence, but 3 feels like a pattern. And patterns demand explanation. Maybe it is all chance. Maybe the universe is throwing stones in our direction, and we are just now awake enough to catch them. But maybe there is a reason, a sequence, a message, hidden not in the objects themselves, but in their timing. 3 arrivals, in less than a decade, each different, each stranger than the last. It could be statistics, it could be luck, or it could be design. The silence before makes the cluster after harder to ignore. Billions of years without one, then 3, and each one carrying something odd. A strange shape, a strange chemistry, a strange rhythm. Coincidence or choreography? Accident or intent? And if it is intent, then who is behind it, and why now? If 3 interstellar objects arrive in 10 years, after billions of quiet skies, the question becomes simple. Why now? Why these years, and not another? Why, after centuries of watching the heavens, does the pattern begin only when we are ready to notice? Oumuamua came first, a shape we still argue about. Was it stone? Was it something else? Its brightness rose and fell in strange rhythm. Bright, then dim. Bright, then dim. A shard tumbling, or a sail catching light. Borisov came next. A comet, yes, but not like ours. Its chemistry suggested a world colder than the ones we know, a place where comets hold different ingredients, a different nursery, a different kind of origin. And then Atlas, small, faint, but pulsing in brightness as it spun, steady flashes, almost like a heartbeat, too regular to ignore, too precise to dismiss easily. 1 could be an accident, 2 could be coincidence, but 3 feels deliberate. Astronomers explained it carefully. The surveys are sharper now. The sky is mapped more fully. Objects we would have missed centuries ago can no longer slip past unseen. That is true. The numbers support it, but still, the timing troubles the imagination. Billions of years of nothing, then 3 in less than a decade, each stranger than the one before. Maybe it is only chance. Maybe the odds finally bent our way, but maybe it is not chance at all. Patterns are the language we look for. We are drawn to them. Sometimes too much. But sometimes they mean something. 3 arrivals, 3 puzzles, 3 pieces of a larger question. Coincidence or choreography? Accident or intent? And if intent, then what is the purpose? Were they meant to be seen? Were they timed for us? Or are we only imagining meaning in the random drift of stones? The silence before makes it harder to dismiss. The sudden sequence makes it harder to explain. 3 in 10 years. After nothing, a pattern we cannot ignore. If these arrivals were only accidents, then we should expect them scattered across time. One here, another centuries later. Not 3 in less than a decade, not a cluster that feels like a sequence. Oumuamua tumbled oddly, its motion changing as if nudged by something unseen. No visible tail, no jets of gas, yet it slowed as it left. A silent push, a whisper of propulsion without an engine. Borisov was easier to understand. A comet, yes, but its birthplace was foreign. Its chemistry didn't match the comets of our own system, as though it came from a world colder, stranger, further from its sun than anything we know nearby. Atlas added its own mystery. Faint, small, but flashing rhythmically as it rotated, a pulse steady enough to tempt the imagination. Was it only sunlight catching its surface, or was it something else? Each visitor offered an explanation. Each one also left a gap. 1 could be ignored, 2 might be chance, but 3 makes us ask, if this is a pattern, then what does it mean? Some astronomers say it is nothing more than our instruments. Our surveys are more complete than ever. Pan-STARRS, Gemini, Hubble, Atlas itself, automated telescopes scanning the sky each night, cataloguing faint points we would have missed in the past. That is the simple answer. But others wonder quietly if the timing is not coincidence, if perhaps it is design. 3 visitors, each stranger than the last, each arriving just as our eyes became sharp enough to see them. Coincidence or choreography? Accident or intent? If intent, then we are left with questions more unsettling. Who sends such things, and why? Were they placed to be noticed? Are we being studied, tested, or warned? Or are these fragments no more than messages drifting across the void, written in stone and ice? The silence before makes us uneasy. The sudden sequence after keeps us awake. 3 in 10 years. After billions of nothing. A pattern too sharp to ignore. If 3 objects came in quick succession, and if they were not accidents, then we are left with a harder question. Purpose. What is the reason? Oumuamua gave us silence. No signals, no tail, just a strange shape, a strange path, an emotion that did not add up. It slipped past without explanation, leaving only suspicion behind. Borisov gave us difference. A comet, yes, but from a colder nursery. A reminder that other systems make other kinds of worlds. It told us that the galaxy is diverse, that not everything is like our home. Atlas gave us rhythm, a steady flashing as it spun. Bright, then dim, bright, then dim. A pulse too clean to ignore. 1 visitor shows motion, 1 shows chemistry, 1 shows rhythm. 3 pieces of a puzzle, 3 fragments of a story. Is that the message? Not in what they are, but in the pattern they form together. Some astronomers lean toward chance. They say the pattern exists only because we are looking for it, that humans are storytellers hungry for meaning in chaos. The universe is vast. 3 in 10 years is strange but not impossible. Yet others wonder if the timing is itself the message. After all, silence holds meaning too. Billions of years with nothing, and then 3, when we are finally able to see. Coincidence or choreography? Accident or intent? If intent, then perhaps the purpose is simple: to remind us we are not alone, to drop fragments into our path, nudging our imagination awake. Perhaps the pattern is nothing more than a cosmic knock on the door. But if that is true, then we must also ask, why now? Why here? And why us? The pattern feels deliberate. The silence before makes it hard to dismiss. 3 in less than a decade, after so long without, it stirs suspicion that cannot be set aside. And once suspicion begins, it does not fade. If the universe has been full of wanderers all along, then why did we not see them sooner? Why now, in this narrow window of years? For centuries our eyes were not enough. The sky was too wide, our instruments too crude. Visitors may have passed before, unnoticed, fading into the dark. But in the last decade, everything changed. Automated surveys scan the heavens night after night. Atlas in Hawaii, Pan-STARRS, Gemini, telescopes feeding streams of data to machines, combing through the faintest dots. Nothing slips by as easily anymore. Oumuamua was caught this way, a faint streak against the stars, not remarkable at first, until the numbers showed it was interstellar. Borisov was tracked by similar means. Its bright tail gave it away, but without modern surveys, it may have been missed. An atlas itself was discovered by the very system that bears its name, a survey designed to catch faint intruders. The explanation then is clear. We are watching more carefully. We are seeing what was always there. That is the simple answer. But the timing still feels sharp. Billions of years of nothing, then 3, right as our eyes opened. Coincidence? Or choreography? It is possible that we only notice because we can. But it is also possible that they arrived now, deliberately, when we could notice, that they were timed to our awakening. 3 in less than a decade, each stranger than the last, each one feeding suspicion more than certainty. Maybe this is what intent looks like. Not signals, not words, just fragments drifting by, chosen to pass when we were finally capable of seeing them, a message hidden in timing itself. If that is true, then we have already received it. We saw, we wondered, we began to ask questions that silence had prevented. Perhaps that was the point. But if so, the message is only beginning. Because patterns, once started, tend to continue. And if 3 have come, then what comes next? If 3 have already come, then the next question is simple. Will there be a 4th? The thought lingers because patterns are sticky. 3 arrivals in 10 years feel less like chance, more like a sequence, and a sequence suggests continuation. Oumuamua, the shard tumbling end over end, Borisov, the comet with strange chemistry, Atlas, the fragment pulsing with rhythm, each different, each stranger than the one before. If a 4th comes, what will it carry? A shape we cannot explain, a signal too sharp to dismiss, or something more ordinary, meant only to keep us guessing. Astronomers hesitate to predict. The data shows interstellar fragments are real and common in theory. Many must wander between the stars, but to pass close enough for us to notice, that remains rare. Statistically, 3 in such quick succession is unusual. A 4th would stretch the odds further. But if the pattern is intent, then statistics no longer apply. If someone is sending them, then a 4th is not unlikely. It is inevitable. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. The imagination cannot help but turn to purpose. If they are sent, then they are steps in a sequence. First the shard, then the comet, then the fragment. Each one a test, each one a lesson, each one preparing us for something still to come. Or perhaps the 4th never arrives. Perhaps the silence returns, and we are left only with the memory of 3. That too would be a message, that we were given a glimpse and then nothing more. 3 in 10 years, after billions of quiet skies. The possibility of a fourth hovers over us like a shadow. If it comes, we will measure it, record its speed, its path, its chemistry. Numbers will tell part of the story, but suspicion will tell the rest. And if it does not come, we will wonder why. Either way, the pattern will not let us go. 3 in less than a decade. The more we repeat it, the heavier it feels. Because patterns are rarely neutral. They invite interpretation. They pull us toward meaning even when none is proven. 1 could be dismissed. 2 could be coincidence. 3 begins to look like intention. And intention, when we cannot explain it, unsettles us. Oumuamua brought silence. Borisov brought difference. Atlas brought rhythm. Each one added something new. Each one built on the last. Was this building deliberate? If so, then 3 is not the end. 3 may only be the beginning. Some have wondered if the sequence itself is the message. 3 arrivals in 10 years, not random, not scattered, a cluster, a pulse of visitors after silence. What if that pulse is meant to tell us something? It could be a countdown or a signal, a way of saying, we are here, we are watching, we are waiting. But it could also be chance, stretched by imagination. The universe is full of debris. The more we look, the more we find. Perhaps 3 simply means our eyes are open. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If it is design, then the message may not be in the objects themselves, but in their timing. 1, 2, 3. Like knocks on a door, like steps in the dark. And the 4th? If it comes, the pattern continues. If it does not, then the silence becomes part of the message too. Either way, we are left with suspicion, and suspicion is enough. Because once you notice a pattern, you cannot unsee it. If the sequence is the message, then the meaning depends on what comes next. A 4th object would extend the pattern. A silence would end it. Both carry weight. Both feel deliberate. Because silence can be as loud as sound. Billions of years without 1 visitor, then 3, close together. That gap itself feels like a statement. Oumuamua left us guessing, its shape too strange, its motion too free, a shard or something else. Borisov reminded us the galaxy is wider than our neighborhood, a comet but born in colder places carrying chemistry not our own. Atlas pulsed steadily, bright, then dim, bright, then dim, a rhythm hard to ignore. Each one told part of a story, each one added to a larger question. If a 4th comes, the pattern becomes harder to dismiss. If none comes, then 3 becomes a closed set, a trilogy of mysteries, a puzzle with no next piece. Some wonder if this is not accident but choreography, that the timing is meant to awaken us, that the cluster of 3 was designed as a signal. But if so, the question becomes, signal of what? A warning? A greeting? A test? The math says coincidence, but the imagination says design. And imagination is difficult to silence once suspicion takes root. 3 in 10 years, after nothing, a pattern heavy with implication. Coincidence or choreography? Accident or intent? If it is intent, then we are already inside the message. And whether a 4th arrives or silence follows, both outcomes will speak, and both will leave us wondering. When suspicion takes hold, the question shifts. No longer what are they, but what do we do with them? Astronomers record the numbers, velocities, orbits, eccentricities greater than 1, cold facts written into tables, That is the science. But science does not quiet the imagination. The silence of space carries weight. The sudden cluster of three feels louder still. Oumuamua, long, thin, tumbling, bright then dim. No tail, no jets, still it slowed, as if nudged, as if steered. Borisov. A comet, yes, but with chemistry different from any comet in our neighbourhood, born far away in colder nurseries, a reminder that other systems breed other worlds. Atlas, small, faint, but flashing rhythmically as it spun, a pulse steady enough to tempt the thought of intent. Three objects, three messages, or none at all. So what do we do with suspicion? Do we treat them as accidents catalogued and forgotten, or as messages waiting to be decoded? History shows we lean towards story. Patterns become omens, numbers become signs, silence becomes meaning. Perhaps we cannot help it. Perhaps it is what keeps us looking upward. But here, the story resists conclusion. Are they random? Or are they placed? Were they meant to be seen? Or did we only stumble upon them? Coincidence? Or choreography? Accident? Or design? If they are design, then our role is strange. Observers of a message we may not yet understand. Watchers of fragments drifting past, unable to touch them, unable to stop them, left only with questions. 3 in 10 years, after billions of nothing, that alone is enough to haunt us, and once haunted, we cannot turn away. The silence before makes the sequence after impossible to ignore. Billions of years with nothing, then 3, close together. It feels like a story unfolding. Stories have beginnings. They have patterns. They move in steps. Was this the first step? Oumuamua gave us doubt. Its shape, its path, its unexplained motion. Borisov gave us difference. A comet, but not like ours, carrying chemistry from colder worlds. Atlas gave us rhythm, flashing as it spun, regular, steady like a pulse in the dark. 3 messages, 3 puzzles, or nothing at all. The odds say chance, the heart says meaning, and the tension between them will not let go. Some astronomers say we must wait. If more come, the numbers will tell us whether this is unusual or only expected. More visitors would prove the sky is busier than we believed. Silence would argue the opposite. But waiting does not quiet the question, because meaning can live in the waiting too. If a 4th comes, the story continues. If none comes, then the trilogy stands alone, a closed set. 3 knocks on the cosmic door, and then silence. Coincidence or choreography? Perhaps that is the point, that doubt itself is the message, that the visitors exist only to stir our imagination, to keep us awake at night, to remind us the universe is larger, stranger, and not as quiet as it once seemed. 3 in 10 years. After centuries of silence, it feels like a beginning, though we do not know of what. And beginnings always leave us wondering what comes next. If 3 arrivals feel like a beginning, then the question is what kind of beginning it is. A natural one written by statistics and chance, or an artificial one written by intelligence we do not yet understand. Oumuamua, Borisov, Atlas. Each one could be explained on its own. A shard, a comet, a fragment. Science can catalogue them. Science can fit them into boxes. But taken together, the pattern resists those boxes. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of nothing. That is the piece that unsettles us most, because intelligence often reveals itself in timing, in rhythm, in design. A knock at the door is not random. It is measured, deliberate, intentional. Was this too a kind of knock? Oumuamua passed silently, but it slowed in ways we could not explain. A push with no tail. No jets. Nothing we could see. Only motion that hinted at something hidden. Borisov burned brightly, but its chemistry told of a birthplace different from our own system. A sign of variety, of distance, of other worlds. Atlas pulsed steadily as it spun, bright then dim, bright then dim, almost like a signal, almost like a reminder. 3 visitors, 3 hints, 3 puzzles. Maybe they were accidents, strays wandering from distant systems. Maybe the odds, stretched across the vastness of time, finally bent in our favour. But maybe not. Maybe their clustering is the sign that they were sent when our eyes were finally sharp enough to notice, that the timing was the message. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. And if design, then by whom? What kind of intelligence would speak this way? Through stones, through ice, through silence and rhythm. Why not through words or signals or something more clear? Perhaps because subtlety lasts. A signal can fade, a broadcast can be missed, but a fragment moving through the solar system leaves no doubt. It cannot be ignored, it cannot be erased. 3 in less than a decade. After all the years of nothing, if this is a message, it has already been delivered. We have already received it, and once received, it cannot be forgotten. If silence cannot end the questions, then timing becomes everything. Why now? Why these years? Why did the sequence begin only when our tools were ready to notice? For billions of years, our skies gave us nothing beyond the comets and asteroids bound to the sun. Predictable, familiar, silent. Then, as our telescopes sharpened, as surveys grew automated, as machines began to watch the heavens with tireless eyes, the visitors appeared. Oumuamua in 2017, Borisov in 2019, Atlas in 2025. 3 steps, each stranger than the last. 3 fragments falling into view as if on cue. If it is coincidence, then it is only statistics catching up to us. The universe is vast, filled with wandering debris. As our vision improves, we see what was always there. But if it is intent, then the timing feels deliberate. They appeared when we were ready, not before. They appeared when our surveys could not ignore them. That too is a form of communication. Because what is a message, if not something that arrives when it can be received? A signal sent before its receiver is listening is wasted. A fragment that passes unnoticed may as well not have passed at all. Perhaps the silence before was not emptiness, but patience. Perhaps the sudden sequence now is not chance, but choice. 3 visitors, 3 puzzles, 3 hints placed in our path, timed to our awakening. Coincidence, or choreography, accident, or design. And if design, then the moment itself becomes part of the message. Not just what they are, but when they arrived. Not just their shapes, but their sequence. Oumuamua stirred suspicion. Borisov showed difference. Atlas carried rhythm, each one building on the last, each one feeding the sense that the silence is over. If the pattern continues, we may see more. If it ends here, then silence itself becomes the final word. Either way, the timing feels like a whisper across the void, a whisper we cannot unhear. If the timing is a whisper, then the question becomes, what kind of whisper? A greeting, a warning, or a test? Because tests rarely arrive with clear instructions. They come as puzzles, as patterns, as problems left unsolved. Perhaps these 3 arrivals are not answers, but questions, left for us to struggle with. Oumuamua tested our assumptions about motion. It moved too fast. It slowed with no visible cause. It broke the rules we trusted. Borisov tested our understanding of chemistry. It carried more carbon monoxide than any comet near us. It forced us to imagine worlds colder, stranger than those we know. Atlas tested our sense of silence. It flashed with rhythm, bright, then dim, a steady pulse that tempted us to see signal where perhaps none was meant. 3 visitors, 3 tests, 3 ways of stretching our imagination. If they are only accidents, then they reveal nothing but the randomness of nature. But if they are design, then perhaps the purpose is not to tell us anything directly, but to see what we do when faced with the unexplained. Coincidence, or choreography, accident, or intent. And if intent, then we are being watched, not just to see the fragments themselves, but to see how we respond to them. Do we dismiss them as rocks? Do we build stories around them? Do we begin to wonder if silence itself hides meaning? That might be the real test, not the objects, but our reaction, not the fragments, but the suspicion they stir. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of quiet. If this is a test, it is one we cannot step away from, because once noticed, it cannot be ignored, and once suspicion begins, silence is no longer silence. It is part of the question. If silence itself is part of the question, then maybe we are not alone in asking it. Maybe there are observers, not the visitors themselves, but those who sent them, watching us from far away, waiting to see how we react. It is not a new thought. For decades we have wondered about watchers, about civilizations hidden among the stars, careful, patient, choosing when and how to reveal themselves. But usually we imagine signals, bursts of radio, beams of light, messages broadcast across space. Fragments are different. They do not speak in words. They do not announce themselves. They drift quietly. Their only language is motion, chemistry, rhythm. And perhaps that is the point. Oumuamua forced us to ask why it slowed, why it tumbled with no tail, why its shape was so strange. Borisov forced us to ask why its chemistry was different, why it seemed to belong to a world colder than ours. Atlas forced us to ask why it flashed with rhythm, why its light curve pulsed so cleanly, so steadily. 3 puzzles, 3 chances to notice, 3 chances to wonder if silence is watching us. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps we are being observed not for answers we give, but for the questions we ask. Observers might not need us to solve the puzzles. They may only want to see whether we recognize them as puzzles at all, whether we choose to look deeper or whether we turn away. That itself could be the test, not the objects, not their origins, but us, our reaction, our suspicion, our imagination. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of silence. 3 steps in a pattern that feels deliberate. 3 fragments that feel less like wanderers, more like watchers. If they are watchers, then what comes next? Another fragment, another silence, or something more direct? We do not know. We cannot know. All we can do is watch in return. If all we can do is watch, then the silence itself becomes a kind of reply. Not words, not signals, only quiet that stretches between each arrival. Quiet that may hold as much meaning as the fragments themselves. Because silence is never empty. It can be patience. It can be refusal. It can be an answer we do not want. And when set against 3 sudden visitors, silence feels sharper still. Oumuamua came and left. No follow-up, no explanation, just questions trailing behind it. Borisov arrived, bright tail streaming, and then slipped away into the dark. No others followed. Atlas appeared, faint but pulsing with rhythm, and then too it was gone. Each one gave us hints. Each one left us waiting. Each one was followed by silence, coincidence, or choreography, accident or design. If design, then maybe the silence between is part of the pattern, like rests between notes in music, like pauses between knocks at a door. The absence is not absence at all, it is structure. 3 in less than a decade. After billions of years of nothing, then quiet again. That quiet could be the most deliberate part, enough to keep us restless, enough to make us keep looking. Some astronomers say we should not read too much into it. That silence only means there is nothing, that fragments come and go and between them is empty space. But imagination argues otherwise. The pauses feel intentional, the timing feels chosen, the silence itself begins to whisper. If that is true, then we are already inside a conversation. One where the words are fragments, one where the pauses matter as much as the arrivals. And in that conversation, we have only one role: to listen, to keep watching, to let silence speak. What it is saying, we do not yet know. If silence is part of the message, then maybe it is not the end of the conversation. Maybe it is an invitation, a pause waiting for us to respond. Because every message implies a listener. Every knock at a door expects an answer. If 3 arrivals were a signal, then the silence after could be a space left open for us. Oumuamua raised questions about motion, a shard moving too freely, slowing in ways we could not explain. Borisov raised questions about chemistry, a comet carrying fingerprints of colder worlds, different nurseries. Atlas raised questions about rhythm, a steady pulse of light, regular enough to tempt suspicion. 3 visitors, 3 questions left hanging, 3 silences waiting afterward. What if the silence is not absence but expectation, coincidence or choreography, accident or design? If design, then maybe the pause is deliberate, to see if we will speak into it, to see if we will answer, not in words but in action, with our own signals, with our own attempts to reach back. Humanity has already tried before. Broadcasts aimed at nearby stars, pulses of radio, golden records launched into the dark, but those were sent into silence without reply. Now, after 3 visitors in quick succession, the silence feels different. It feels like a space left for us to fill. But what do we say? How do we answer a message written in fragments of stone and ice? How do we respond to silence disguised as pattern? Perhaps the answer is not in science alone, but in imagination, in daring to act as if we are being spoken to, in daring to treat the silence not as emptiness, but as a question. And once a question is asked, it will not go away until something is said in return. If we are meant to answer, then the harder question becomes, what happens when we do? For silence is safe. Questions without answers remain only questions. But a reply breaks the balance. A reply changes everything. Oumuamua left us wondering about motion, a shard that slowed without a tail. If we respond, do we send back data about our own physics? Do we show that we noticed the impossible? Borisov left us wondering about chemistry, a comet with fingerprints from colder nurseries. If we respond, do we send samples of our own? Do we show that we too are made from a specific place? Atlas left us wondering about rhythm, a fragment flashing bright, then dim, again and again. If we respond, do we answer with a rhythm of our own, a pulse of light, a sequence of signals, a knock against the silence, 3 puzzles, 3 silences, 3 possible invitations, coincidence or choreography, accident or intent? If intent, then our reply may already be expected. The pause after the 3rd visitor may be space deliberately left open, a silence waiting to be filled. But filled with what? A whisper back or something louder? Some astronomers argue we should not respond at all. That silence protects us, that to broadcast into the dark is to reveal ourselves to powers we cannot understand. Better to listen quietly than to shout into an unknown sky. Others argue the opposite, that silence is no shield, that if watchers are real, they already know we are here, that not replying is the louder choice, that answering is only honesty. Either way, the moment feels heavy, because 3 in 10 years is not easy to forget. The silence afterward is not easy to ignore, and if we are inside a conversation, then we must eventually decide whether to remain listeners or become participants. And once we participate, the story changes forever. If the story changes when we answer, then the next question is how the watchers, if they exist, might respond. Because silence is safe. It leaves the pattern unfinished, the puzzle unsolved. But a reply is not silence. A reply invites reaction. Oumuamua gave us motion unexplained, a shard slowing without cause. If it was sent, then perhaps it was meant to see if we would notice. Would we measure? Would we question? Borisov gave us chemistry foreign to us, a comet rich in carbon monoxide pointing to colder, stranger worlds. If it was sent, then perhaps it was meant to show us that other nurseries exist. Would we compare? Would we understand? Atlas gave us rhythm, a fragment flashing as it spun. Bright, then dim, again and again. If it was sent, then perhaps it was meant to tempt us into responding in kind. Would we echo? Would we knock back? 3 visitors, 3 possible prompts. 3 pauses after, waiting, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then our answer might trigger the next step, a silence that turns into something else, a 4th visitor, a clearer sign, or perhaps nothing at all, because nothing itself could be the response. What if the watchers only measure our courage? Do we remain quiet? Do we risk a reply? Do we dare to break the silence? Some say it is too dangerous, that revealing ourselves is reckless, that if they are out there they may not be kind. Others argue the opposite, that watchers, if they exist, already know, that refusing to speak makes no difference. Either way, silence grows heavier. It waits, stretched between stars, hanging over us like a question, and questions demand answers. If we answer, perhaps the watchers will too. If we remain quiet, perhaps silence is all we will ever hear. Both choices carry weight. Both change the story. And either way, the story has already begun. If the story has already begun, then maybe these visitors were not greetings at all. Maybe they were tests. Tests are rarely comfortable. They do not arrive with answers. They arrive with puzzles, with questions, with patterns designed to stretch us. What if Oumuamua, Borisov and Atlas were not messages meant to comfort, but challenges meant to measure us? Oumuamua broke our rules of motion. It moved too fast. It slowed with no visible tail. It forced us to admit that our models could not explain everything, a test of our ability to notice the impossible. Borisov broke our rules of chemistry. A comet, yes, but carrying more carbon monoxide than anything near us. It showed us worlds colder, stranger, different. A test of our ability to imagine what lies beyond our neighborhood. Atlas broke our rules of silence. It pulsed steadily as it rotated, bright, then dim, again. A test of our ability to see rhythm where we expected only randomness. 3 fragments, 3 breaks in the pattern of our understanding. 3 tests, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then what were these tests for? To measure our attention, our curiosity, our imagination? Perhaps the watchers, if they exist, wanted to see how far we would go. Would we notice? Would we ask? Would we begin to wonder if silence itself is alive with meaning? Tests are not given without purpose. They measure readiness. They reveal strengths and weaknesses. They decide who is prepared for the next step. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of silence. If this was a test, then it has already been graded. The result is not in their arrival, but in our reaction, and our reaction has been suspicion, debate, wonder. Perhaps that was all they wanted to know. If the visitors were tests, then the purpose may not have been to invite us forward. It may have been to decide whether to stay away. Because tests can be gates, they can be filters, they do not always open the door. Sometimes they close it. Sometimes they measure not readiness, but risk. Oumuamua could have been the first filter. It moved strangely, slowed strangely, and we noticed. That means we were watching. That means we were capable of suspicion. Borisov could have been the second filter. Its chemistry was foreign, colder, and we measured. That means we were capable of science. That means we could compare. Atlas could have been the third filter. A rhythm, a steady pulse, and we wondered if it was signal. That means we were capable of imagination. That means we could question silence. 3 fragments, 3 filters, 3 glimpses of what we are. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps the watchers were not reaching out at all. Perhaps they were observing from afar, deciding whether we are safe to approach or whether we are too dangerous. Civilizations that endure must be careful. Silence may not be cowardice. It may be survival. To reveal yourself is to risk being destroyed. If they exist, they would know this. They would test before they trust. And maybe the tests are not for us, but about us, to see if we are reckless, to see if we notice, to see if we imagine, and then to decide whether silence is safer than contact. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of nothing. Maybe that was enough. Maybe they saw what they needed to see. And maybe that is why the silence now feels heavier than before. If the silence feels heavier, then perhaps it is not just refusal, perhaps it is warning, because silence can protect, but silence can also caution. It can say, do not go further. It can say, you are not ready, or worse, you are too dangerous to trust. Oumuamua unsettled us with motion. It slowed without explanation. It left without a trace. A mystery that suggested control. Borisov unsettled us with chemistry. Too much carbon monoxide, too different from what we knew. A reminder that the galaxy holds worlds beyond our imagination. Atlas unsettled us with rhythm, a steady pulse as it spun. Bright, then dim, again. A light curve that felt like signal. 3 arrivals, 3 unsettlings, 3 pieces of suspicion. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then maybe the purpose was not invitation, but deterrence, a way of showing us the edges of possibility without stepping closer, a way of reminding us that others exist, but not for us to reach. What if silence after the third is not emptiness, but a barrier, a cosmic stop? 3 fragments placed in our sky, then nothing more. It is not the first time humanity has thought of warnings hidden in the stars. The concept of the dark forest imagines civilizations hiding, silent, cautious, because danger is everywhere. To speak is to risk being destroyed. To reveal yourself is to invite attack. If that is true, then silence is not just survival, it is strategy. And fragments drifting into our path may be less message than signpost, a way of saying, we are here, but stay away. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of quiet skies, enough to awaken suspicion, enough to remind us we are not alone, but followed by silence. Silence that feels deliberate, a silence that may not be peace, but warning. If silence is warning, then perhaps it was not only meant for us, perhaps it was meant for others. Because warnings are not always spoken to the ones being warned. Sometimes they are placed for others to see, a signal of danger, a marker in the dark that says, here lies risk. Oumuamua could have been such a marker, a shard tumbling strangely, slowing without reason. Its very oddness may have been the point. A sign that our system contains motion worth watching and perhaps avoiding. Borisov may have been another, a comet burning bright, carrying chemistry unlike our own. A way of showing that we study such things closely, that we notice difference. Atlas may have been the third, a faint fragment pulsing rhythmically as it spun. A pulse that looked like a message, even if it was not. A way of saying, they will see patterns, even when there are none. 3 fragments, 3 warnings, 3 signposts in silence, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the silence afterward might not be meant for us at all. It may be meant for those who come later, a pause that carries meaning in its emptiness, a reminder to anyone else passing by. Be careful here. This interpretation is darker still, because it paints us not as listeners waiting for contact, but as subjects being labelled, a world marked on some cosmic map as dangerous, unstable, unpredictable, 3 in less than a decade, after billions of quiet. That is not chance. It feels like classification. It feels like placement into a category we do not control. Perhaps the silence is less invitation than boundary, less conversation than containment. And if so, then we may never hear more, because silence in this case would not end. It would stretch on as a wall, a warning left not for us to understand, but for others to obey, a warning written in fragments of stone and ice. If fragments are warnings, then perhaps Earth has already been catalogued, already placed on a list we cannot see. Because to warn others, you must first identify the danger. You must first mark it. Perhaps Oumuamua, Borisov and Atlas were not random arrivals at all. Perhaps they were the markers, the evidence, the classification. Oumuamua showed motion that broke the rules. A shard moving strangely, slowing without cause, recorded in data, preserved in memory, a marker of unpredictability. Borisov showed chemistry that was different, colder, sharper. It reminded us of distant nurseries, worlds we do not know, but perhaps its point was simpler, that we study such things too closely, that we notice. Atlas showed rhythm, a faint flash repeating steadily as it spun, a rhythm we could not ignore, a sign that we search for meaning even in silence, that we are restless, that we are suspicious. 3 markers, 3 traits, 3 warnings, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then Earth may already be on a cosmic registry, not as a place to visit, not as a place to contact, but as a place to avoid. This is not comforting. It means we are not invisible. It means we are seen, but not welcomed, not approached, only flagged. Civilizations that survive must be careful. They must keep records of danger. They must warn each other. A shard here, a comet there, a fragment passing through. Perhaps these are the notes they leave for one another. A way of saying, do not touch this system. Do not disturb this world. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of silence. That feels like a classification, not coincidence. It feels like a label written in fragments of stone. And if we have been labelled, then the silence may not lift, because silence in this case is not patience. It is decision. And once a decision is made, it may last longer than we can imagine. If we have been labelled, then the question sharpens. Who labelled us and when? Because the fragments we see now may not be new decisions. They may be echoes of judgments made long ago. Stones and shards do not travel quickly. Oumuamua may have been set on its path millions of years before we had the tools to notice it. Borisov too, a TLAS as well. Their timing may feel sudden to us, but perhaps the choice was ancient. Oumuamua revealed motion that should not have been possible, a shard tumbling oddly, slowing without a tail. Maybe that motion was not the message, but the mark, the sign chosen to tag us. Borisov revealed chemistry unusual to us, a comet rich in carbon monoxide, a reminder of other nurseries. But maybe its chemistry was not for us at all. Maybe it was for others, to show them that we had measured, that we had noticed. Atlas revealed rhythm, a faint flash repeating as it spun. Maybe that rhythm was less communication than confirmation, a sign that humans would see pattern even in silence. 3 fragments, 3 markers, Three echoes of a decision already made. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then Earth's labelling may not be recent. It may be part of an ancient catalogue, a record passed from one civilization to another, whispering caution across the ages, a way of saying, this world notices, this world asks questions, this world is dangerous. It changes how we think of silence, not as absence, but as a verdict, not as patience, but as memory. Perhaps the silence now is only the continuation of a silence chosen long ago. And if that is true, then the visitors were not messages at all. They were reminders, stones set in motion long before, arriving exactly when we were ready to see them. Timed not by chance, but by design. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of years of nothing. A verdict arriving on schedule. And once written, some verdicts cannot be unwritten. If the verdict was ancient, then another question rises. What did humanity do to earn it? How could a young species on a small blue planet have been marked before we even knew we were being watched? Perhaps it was not us at all. Perhaps the warning was written long before our kind appeared. This system is old. The sun has burned for billions of years. Civilizations may have passed through here long before ours, leaving traces now lost to us. If so, then we inherited not just Earth, but its reputation. Oumuamua may have been set on its path millions of years ago. Its strange slowing may have been engineered, not for us, but for whoever came after. Borisov may have been seeded, carrying a chemistry designed to catch the eye of any who measured. It did not need to be for humans specifically, only for whoever developed science here. Atlas may have been the final reminder, a pulse of rhythm that said less about itself and more about us, that whoever lives here will always look for patterns. 3 fragments, 3 reminders, 3 echoes of something older than we are. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the judgment may not have been about humanity, but about the system itself, about Earth, about the sun, about the way life here evolves. Perhaps others saw this place as dangerous long before we arrived. Perhaps the silence is not aimed at us, but at the coordinates we inhabit. And yet it is we who feel the weight of it, we who see the pattern, we who inherit the warning, 3 in less than a decade, after billions of quiet skies, a verdict arriving on schedule, echoing across time. And if the verdict was not meant for us, that may be worse, because it means no matter what we do, the silence will not change. We were marked before we could speak. We were judged before we could answer, and silence once decided endures. If the judgment was written long ago, then maybe the fragments were never meant for us to notice. Maybe the true test was whether we would see them at all, because the sky is vast and these objects are small. A shard tumbling across starlight, a comet with a faint tail, a fragment pulsing faintly in darkness. They could have passed unnoticed, they could have been just more stones in the void. But we saw them, we tracked them, we debated their meaning. That may be the test. Not what they are, but whether we could perceive them. Oumuamua slipped past, a faint streak across telescope screens. We caught it, we measured, we wondered why it slowed. Borisov burned brighter, but its chemistry was subtle. We analysed it and saw difference. We imagined worlds colder than our own. Atlas pulsed faintly as it spun. We noticed the rhythm. We argued whether it was signal or chance. 3 visitors, 3 chances to miss. 3 times we did not. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then maybe the point was not the fragments themselves, but us. The watchers did not need to send words. They only needed to drop questions. Questions hidden in stone and ice. Questions so faint that only a species awake, alert, searching, would see them. And we did. We saw. We asked. We filled silence with suspicion. Perhaps that is all they wanted. to see if we were ready to notice, to see if we were capable of doubt, to see if silence alone was enough to stir our imagination. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of nothing. It feels less like chance, more like design. But maybe the design was not the fragments, it was us. And now that we have noticed, the silence is no longer silence. It is answer. An answer that leaves us wondering what question we have just agreed to. If noticing was the test, then perhaps by passing it, we have already joined a conversation we do not yet understand. Because conversations do not always begin with words. Sometimes they begin with silence, with questions, with gestures subtle enough that only the attentive will respond. Oumuamua may have been the first gesture, a shard tumbling strangely, slowing without cause, a question about motion, a puzzle set into our sky. Borisov may have been the second gesture, a comet with chemistry unlike our own, a question about origin, a reminder that the galaxy is broader than we imagined. Atlas may have been the third gesture, a faint fragment pulsing with rhythm, a question about pattern, a temptation to see signal in silence. 3 gestures, 3 questions, 3 silences after. Coincidence, or choreography, accident, or design. If design, then by noticing, we have already answered, not in broadcasts, not in words, but in attention, in curiosity, in suspicion. The watchers, if they exist, do not need our reply. They already have it. The fact that we saw is reply enough, and that changes everything, because it means we are not waiting for contact. We are inside it already. The conversation has begun, even if we do not understand its language. But what happens next? Do more fragments come? Does silence stretch forever? Do the watchers move from questions to answers? 3 in less than a decade. After billions of quiet, it feels like a threshold crossed, a before and an after. Before we thought silence was emptiness. After we know silence is alive with possibility. Before we thought the sky was still. After we know it carries questions we cannot ignore. And once crossed, thresholds cannot be uncrossed. We saw, we asked, we joined, whether we meant to or not. If we have already joined, then the next move may no longer be theirs. It may be ours. Because once you enter a conversation, silence is also a kind of reply. To notice and then remain quiet is itself an answer. To notice and attempt a response is another. Either way, the watchers, if they exist, will learn something new about us. Oumuamua asked a question about motion. We measured it. We published it. We argued about it. That was our reply. Borisov asked a question about chemistry. We studied it. We compared it. We spoke of nurseries colder than our own. That was our reply. Atlas asked a question about rhythm. We watched its light curve. We debated whether it could be a signal. That too was our reply. 3 questions, 3 replies, 3 signs that we are awake. Coincidence, or choreography, accident, or design. If design, then the conversation has already passed its opening exchange. The watchers have spoken. We have responded. Now the silence that follows feels heavier, not because nothing is said, but because something has been asked of us. What do we do next? Do we try to answer with signals, pulses of radio, beams of light, broadcasts cast into the dark? Or do we continue to reply in the way we already have, by noticing, by measuring, by imagining? Some say replying risks too much. That to announce ourselves is to reveal more than we can defend. Others say not replying is also a choice, that silence is loud too, that the watchers, if they exist, will measure our refusal as clearly as they measure our curiosity. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. It feels less like an accident, more like a stage we did not know we stood on until the lights turned toward us. And once on the stage, we cannot leave. We can only decide how to play our part. If the stage is set, then perhaps the sky itself is the audience, watching, waiting, measuring, not just what we say, but what we do. Because performances are not only about words, they are about presence, about gesture, about silence that carries meaning. Perhaps our presence on this stage, our ability to notice, to question, to wonder, is already the performance being judged. Oumuamua may have been the first cue, a shard moving strangely, slowing without cause. Our reaction was to debate, to argue, to split into camps. Some called it natural, some artificial. The watchers, if they exist, would have seen not certainty, but division. Borisov may have been the second cue, a comet rich in foreign chemistry. We studied, we measured, we catalogued, a calmer reply, less frantic, more certain. The watchers would have seen patience, method, science at work. Atlas may have been the third cue, a faint fragment flashing rhythmically. We leaned toward imagination, toward story, toward suspicion. The watchers would have seen curiosity stretching into wonder. 3 cues, 3 reactions, 3 glimpses of humanity's character, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps the fragments were never meant to tell us much at all. Perhaps they were meant to reveal us, to put us under light and see what we did. A cosmic stage play where we are the performers and silence is the audience's gaze. What do they see? A species clever enough to measure, but restless enough to doubt, curious enough to look deeper, but uncertain enough to fight among ourselves. An audience would notice all of it, and maybe that is the point, not to test our intelligence, but to observe our nature, to see whether we are cautious, whether we are reckless, whether we treat silence as emptiness or as invitation. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. The stage feels deliberate, the lights feel bright, the audience feels real. And once on stage, there is no way back into the dark. If the stage is real, then perhaps the performance is not just observation, perhaps it is judgment, because audiences do not always watch silently. Sometimes they weigh, sometimes they decide. A play may be art or failure, a gesture may be applause or rejection, and if we are on a stage beneath the eyes of others, then maybe every reaction is being scored. Oumuamua may have tested our imagination. It moved strangely, slowed strangely. Some of us called it rock, some of us called it probe. The watchers, if they exist, would have seen disagreement, creativity, division. Borisov may have tested our discipline. It burned bright with chemistry foreign to us. We studied carefully, measured precisely, and placed it in context. The watchers would have seen steadiness, science, patience. Atlas may have tested our hunger for meaning, a faint fragment flashing rhythmically, almost like a beacon. We filled silence with story. The watchers would have seen wonder, suspicion, hope. 3 cues, 3 judgments, 3 glimpses of who we are. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then judgment may already be underway. Not a trial with words, but an evaluation of character. A cosmic verdict forming slowly, written not in laws but in observation. What are they deciding? Whether we are safe, whether we are reckless, whether we are ready to step into silence without breaking it. Civilizations that endure may judge others harshly. They may fear those who look too quickly for meaning. They may prize those who measure carefully, who stay cautious. Or they may admire curiosity itself, seeing in it a spark that cannot be hidden. We do not know what values they hold. We do not know what they seek. But if we are being judged, then everything we do in reply matters. Every silence, every suspicion, every story we tell about 3 fragments drifting through our sky, 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness, enough to awaken us, enough perhaps to place us under review, and once judgment begins, it rarely stops. If judgment has begun, then it must lead somewhere, because no verdict exists only to be weighed. It always carries consequence. And if 3 arrivals in 10 years were part of a judgment, then the next question is simple. What outcome waits for us? Acceptance is one possibility. Perhaps the fragments were gentle signals, ways of saying, you are ready, you are seen, you may join. The odd motions, the strange chemistry, the pulsing rhythm, these may have been tokens of recognition, a cosmic handshake across the dark. Rejection is another. Perhaps the verdict is already against us. The visitors may have been warnings, not invitations. 3 in less than a decade. Then silence again, like a door closing softly but firmly. A way of saying, we know you are there, but we will not come closer. And then there is the third path, the one harder to name. Not acceptance, not rejection, but something in between. Observation without contact, interest without trust. Perhaps the fragments were only markers, signals to others, records for the future. A reminder that Earth exists, but that it is to be watched from afar. Oumuamua unsettled us with motion. Borisov unsettled us with chemistry. Atlas unsettled us with rhythm. 3 unsettlements placed into our sky, leaving us restless still. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then maybe we are already inside the consequence. Maybe the silence now is not indecision, but result. To us, it feels like waiting. To them, it may already be over. And yet we keep asking, because to be judged is to wonder what will follow. Contact, silence, a future cut short, or one opened wider than we can imagine. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. It feels less like chance, more like verdict. But verdicts come with outcomes, and outcomes change stories. We are inside the story already. We just do not yet know how it ends. If we do not know how it ends, then maybe that is the point. Perhaps there is no end. Perhaps the verdict was never meant to be contact or rejection, but observation without resolution, a watch that does not stop. Because not every story has a conclusion. Some remain open, drifting, unfinished. If watchers exist, they may not be waiting to act at all. They may be content to watch us forever, to study from a distance, to let us play out our story without interference. Oumuamua may have been the first sign of that watch. Its strange slowing, its unnatural path, like a probe set long ago, gliding through the solar system not to speak but to measure. Borisov may have been another sign. Its alien chemistry noted, studied, but perhaps chosen not for us, but for others. Proof that we compare, that we analyze, that we reach beyond ourselves. Atlas may have been the third, its rhythmic pulse tempting us to imagine signal, a fragment that revealed not itself, but us, our hunger for pattern, our refusal to ignore silence. 3 fragments, 3 observations, 3 lines written in a ledger we cannot see. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then maybe Earth is not in conversation but in surveillance, not invited, not rejected, simply monitored, like a spark in the forest, noted in case it becomes fire. And that is perhaps the strangest outcome of all. To live knowing we may be watched but never approached, studied but never touched, Our actions weighed but never answered, 3 in less than a decade. After billions of stillness, the pattern feels like acknowledgement, but not embrace. Attention, but not trust. And if that is the truth, then the silence now will never lift. It will stretch onward, endless, as they continue to watch from the shadows. And the weight of being seen, without ever seeing back, will remain. If we are being watched forever, then perhaps that is the most dangerous outcome of all, because silence can be endured if it is only emptiness. But silence that hides eyes behind it is different. It carries weight. It carries pressure. To be observed without knowing the rules is to live inside a test that never ends. Oumuamua may have been the first page of that test, a shard tumbling oddly, slowing with no visible cause. We noticed, we measured, we argued. The watchers, if they exist, would have written, "They see motion." Borisov may have been the second page, a comet with chemistry far from our own. We catalogued it, compared it, imagined colder nurseries. The watchers would have written, "They see difference." Atlas may have been the third, a fragment pulsing steadily, tempting us to imagine rhythm as signal. We debated, we wondered. The watchers would have written, "They see pattern." 3 pages, 3 observations, 3 entries in a ledger we cannot read. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the danger is this. We do not know what the test measures. We do not know what answers count as failure or which count as success. We do not know if curiosity is reward or if it is the very reason to be avoided. And so we live beneath a silence that is not empty, a silence that may be judgment stretched across centuries, a silence where every discovery, every suspicion, every story we tell about 3 fragments could be part of the score, 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. That is enough to change how we see ourselves, enough to turn the night sky into an audience even if no one is there. And once you feel watched, you cannot unfeel it. Every glance upward is shadowed by the thought that the gaze might be returned. That is the danger. Not that we are ignored, not that we are contacted, but that we are measured forever by standards we cannot know. And silence, in that case, will never end. If silence never ends, then perhaps the rules of judgment are not unknown. Perhaps they are hidden in plain sight, written into the fragments themselves, because every puzzle carries hints of how it should be solved. And maybe Oumuamua, Borisov and Atlas were not only visitors, but clues, not instructions, but patterns, quiet lessons left in stone and ice. Oumuamua carried the lesson of motion. It moved too strangely to dismiss. Its sudden slowing broke the rules we thought unshakable. The hint may be simple. Look closer at what you believe cannot change. Borisov carried the lesson of chemistry. Too much carbon monoxide, too foreign to be familiar. Its trail reminded us that other nurseries exist, colder, stranger, still alive with possibility. The hint may be simple. Your home is not the only way life can be made. Atlas carried the lesson of rhythm, a fragment pulsing bright, then dim again and again. Its light curve read like a pattern, almost like a signal. The hint may be simple. Pattern is the bridge between silence and speech. 3 fragments, 3 lessons, 3 rules written without words. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps these are the very rules of judgment. Notice motion, study chemistry, seek pattern, a test not of power but of perception. Not whether we can defend ourselves, but whether we can see. And if that is true, then maybe we are not lost inside an endless silence. Maybe we are inside a syllabus, a curriculum written in debris drifting across our skies. Lessons too large to ignore, too strange to explain, too quiet to forget. 3 in less than a decade. After billions of emptiness. That does not feel random. It feels structured, like steps in a course. Perhaps the watchers are not deciding what to do with us. Perhaps they are teaching us how to decide for ourselves. And the silence afterward is not absence, but pause. The space between lessons. The quiet before the next page turns. If the fragments are lessons, then maybe we are already inside a classroom. A classroom vast as the sky, where the syllabus is written not in books, but in stone and light. Because classrooms do not always look like what we expect. Sometimes they are only spaces where awareness deepens. Sometimes the teacher never speaks at all. Sometimes the silence itself is the lesson. Oumuamua may have been the first page, a shard tumbling oddly, slowing when it should not. A question about motion, a reminder that the universe is stranger than the rules we built around it. Borisov may have been the second page, a comet rich in chemistry too foreign to dismiss. A question about origin, a reminder that life can rise in colder nurseries on stranger paths. Atlas may have been the third page, a fragment pulsing rhythmically, bright and dim, bright and dim. A question about pattern, a reminder that silence can carry signals if we are willing to look. 3 pages. 3 questions, 3 lessons, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the classroom is not confined to Earth. The classroom is the solar system itself. The blackboard is the sky. The chalk is fragments of stone and ice sent drifting on long orbits. And we, without realizing it, have already taken our seats. We have already begun the lesson. By noticing, by asking, by refusing to turn away, we have started to learn. But what kind of lesson is it? To expand our science, to sharpen our suspicion, to remind us that silence is alive with meaning, or to test whether we are ready for more? More visitors, more questions, more stages in a syllabus that stretches across centuries. 3 in less than a decade after billions of stillness. That feels less like chance, more like curriculum. A cosmic classroom where attendance is mandatory, but the subject remains unknown. And if that is true, then the silence now is not emptiness. It is only recess. A pause before the next lesson begins. If the silence is only recess, then the next lesson may already be on its way, and perhaps it will not be subtle, because the first 3 could be missed. Oumuamua was faint, Borisov was distant, Atlas was small. Each required sharp eyes, sensitive instruments, patient minds. But a teacher does not repeat the same lesson forever. At some point, the questions must grow harder. At some point, the test must be undeniable. Oumuamua tested our attention. Would we notice an object moving strangely, slowing when it should not? We did. Borisov tested our science. Would we measure its chemistry, see its alien fingerprint? We did. Atlas tested our imagination. Would we see rhythm even in a fragment's faint pulse? We did. 3 lessons, 3 tests passed, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the next step may be different, not faint, not deniable, not a puzzle for only astronomers, but a lesson written large enough that no one on Earth could ignore it. What would such a lesson look like? A fragment larger, brighter, closer, a comet so strange it redefines what we know, or something that breaks silence not with rhythm, but with clarity? A signal, unmistakable, undeniable, no longer hidden in stone. The thought unsettles us because we are not sure what to hope for. Silence is heavy, but safe. A louder lesson may be thrilling or catastrophic. We long for answers, but we fear them too. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. If that was only the beginning, then the next page could already be turning, and we, whether ready or not, will be asked to read it. And when that happens, there will be no turning away. If the next lesson will be undeniable, then perhaps it is already on its way, because fragments do not move quickly. They travel for millions of years, crossing gulfs of darkness before slipping into our sky. Oumuamua may have been launched long before we stood upright. Borisov may have been set adrift before the first cities rose. Atlas may have been released before we learned to write. If those 3 were lessons, then the next may already be en route, locked into its orbit, waiting only for the moment when it crosses our path. Oumuamua showed us motion that unsettled us, a shard tumbling oddly, slowing without cause. A question written in its speed. Borisov showed us chemistry that unsettled us. A comet too rich in carbon monoxide, whispering of colder nurseries. A question written in its ice. Atlas showed us rhythm that unsettled us. A fragment flashing steadily, as if pulsing in silence. A question written in its light. 3 lessons, 3 pages, 3 questions. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the 4th lesson may already exist, hidden in the dark, approaching slowly, inevitably. We simply have not seen it yet. What form would it take? Something larger, brighter, impossible to miss. Something that streaks across the sky so clearly that no one can dismiss it as mere stone. Or something stranger still, an object whose motion, chemistry, and rhythm all break rules at once, leaving no room for chance. The thought lingers. Maybe the syllabus is not finished. Maybe the silence is not conclusion, but interval. Maybe the next page is already turning, unseen. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. That rhythm feels like the start of something, not its end. And if the 4th arrives, it will no longer be lesson for a few, it will be lesson for all. If the 4th visitor comes, then what if it is not stone at all? What if it is unmistakably artificial? Because natural fragments can be doubted. Oumuamua could be shard, could be sail. Borisov could be comet, could be signal. Atlas could be rhythm, could be chance. Each left room for argument, space for denial, but a 4th may not. A 4th may be crafted to erase doubt entirely. Oumuamua taught us to see anomaly in motion. Its path bent rules, its slowing made no sense. Borisov taught us to see anomaly in chemistry. Too much carbon monoxide, too far from the familiar. Atlas taught us to see anomaly in rhythm, a pulse so regular it was difficult to dismiss. 3 anomalies, 3 doubts, 3 debates. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps the pattern was always leading toward a 4th, one that carries not just anomaly but clarity. No more fragments mistaken for stone, No more pulses mistaken for rotation, a form so deliberate it cannot be denied. What would that look like? A fragment too smooth, too perfect in symmetry, a structure that reveals engineering, not accident, a motion that bends not by gravity, but by choice. And if such an object arrives, the debate ends, the whispers end, the suspicion ends, the lesson becomes undeniable. But do we want that? Doubt protects us. Suspicion allows safety in uncertainty. Certainty would demand response. Certainty would break silence. 3 in less than a decade. After billions of emptiness. If the fourth is artificial, then the classroom ends and the conversation begins. And once that begins, we cannot return to silence. If silence ends, then everything changes, because silence has been our shield, our protection, our excuse. Doubt has allowed us to delay. Suspicion has allowed us to argue. But certainty leaves no room to hide. Oumuamua could be dismissed as shard. Borisov could be dismissed as comet. Atlas could be dismissed as fragment. 3 arrivals, 3 debates, 3 shelters of uncertainty. Coincidence or choreography. Accident or design. If design, then the fourth could take away the shelter. No more hiding behind maybe. No more safety in coincidence. A shape too clear. A motion too deliberate. A design too sharp to ignore. What happens then? Astronomers would no longer argue in quiet journals. The world would no longer dismiss the question as academic. A fourth, if undeniable, would not belong to scientists alone. It would belong to everyone. Every government, every city, every person awake under the night sky. The silence after 3 visitors has been unsettling. Yes, but it has also been merciful. It has given us time to wonder without acting, to suspect without responding, to imagine without deciding. A fourth would strip that mercy away. The question would become demand. The classroom would become dialogue. The watchers, if they exist, would no longer be distant suspicions. They would be present, real, unavoidable. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of emptiness. If there is a fourth, undeniable and deliberate, then silence will end. And when silence ends, everything else begins. And beginnings are rarely safe. If beginnings are rarely safe, then the end of silence would not belong to astronomers alone. It would belong to everyone. Because 3 visitors, faint and debated, have lived mostly in the quiet halls of science. They have been puzzles for telescopes, questions for journals, whispers for late-night conversations. But a fourth, if undeniable, if deliberate, would spill beyond those walls. It would belong to the species, to all of us. Oumuamua gave us suspicion. Some said rock, some said sail. It unsettled, but remained abstract. Borisov gave us difference. A comet unlike ours, a curiosity but not a threat. It unsettled only slightly. Atlas gave us rhythm, a pulse that sparked imagination, but faint enough to ignore. 3 hints, 3 small fires of wonder, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the fourth would ignite more than wonder. It would ignite reaction. Governments would weigh it as threat. Cultures would treat it as sign. Markets, armies, religions, none would remain untouched. Because certainty does not stay in laboratories. It spreads. It seeps into stories, into fears, into dreams. The question would no longer be, what do astronomers see? The question would be, what does it mean for us? And that is where silence has been kind. Silence has allowed most of the world to sleep undisturbed. Silence has kept the question abstract. Silence has let life continue, while only a few stare upward and wonder. But if silence ends, it will end for all. No one will escape the sky. No one will escape the question. 3 in less than a decade. After billions of stillness. If the fourth comes, unmistakable, then the story will no longer be theirs. It will be ours. And once it becomes ours, the world will change. Not slowly, not quietly, but all at once. If the world shifts, then the question is not only what the Watchers might do, but what we will do. Because certainty does not just inform, it demands reaction. And when silence ends, humanity will face itself as much as it faces the sky. Oumuamua sparked division. Some clung to natural explanations. Others whispered probe, sail, intent. Suspicion fractured us. Borisov sparked precision. We measured, we compared, we spoke carefully. A calmer reaction, more unified, but distant. Atlas sparked imagination. Its rhythm unsettled us into debate once more. Signal or spin, message or chance. 3 arrivals, 3 glimpses of who we are when confronted with the unknown. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the 4th would force us further. Would we unite, or would we fracture? Would we share knowledge, or hoard it? Would we treat the object as opportunity, or as threat? History suggests division. Nations guard their skies. Armies guard their secrets. Even comets have been politicized, their orbits twisted into omens. A 4th, undeniable visitor might not bring unity. It might bring competition. But history also suggests wonder. Moments where the sky has drawn us together. An eclipse, a comet, the first steps on the moon. For brief instants, the boundaries between us dissolve, replaced by awe. Perhaps a 4th would not divide us. Perhaps it would remind us that the sky belongs to no one and to everyone. The truth is we do not know, and that uncertainty may be part of the lesson, to show the Watchers, if they exist, not only what we see, but how we act when seeing. Do we fight? Do we share? Do we dream? 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness, each one has already revealed something about us. The 4th will reveal more, not about the object, but about humanity. And once revealed, we cannot take it back. If fate is what hangs above us, then maybe the Watchers, if they exist, are not testing our science at all. Maybe they are testing our ability to live together beneath the same sky. Because motion, chemistry, rhythm, these can be studied with instruments, but cooperation cannot. Unity cannot. Those things reveal themselves only in how we act when the unknown presses close. Oumuamua revealed our division. Scientists argued, headlines flared, and the world split between naturalists and dreamers. Borisov revealed our discipline. We studied it carefully, measured its tail, catalogued its chemistry. A steadier, calmer reply. Atlas revealed our imagination. Its rhythm sent us spiraling into suspicion, whispering of signals, wondering about Watchers. 3 visitors, 3 reactions, 3 glimpses of not just what we know, but who we are. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps the real syllabus is not written in stone or ice, but in our behavior. How do we respond when confronted with anomaly? Do we fracture into fear, or bind ourselves with wonder? Do we hoard discovery or share it? Do we imagine threat or invitation? Maybe this is the test, to see whether we can stand together in the face of silence, to see whether we can share a mystery without tearing ourselves apart. Because Watchers, if they are real, would know what silence does. Silence is pressure. Silence demands story. And in the absence of story, we invent our own. That invention can divide us or unite us. 3 in less than a decade. After billions of stillness, perhaps the point was never the fragments themselves. Perhaps the point was to see if humanity can carry the weight of uncertainty without collapsing. And if we cannot, then maybe silence will continue, not as invitation, not as warning, but as verdict. If the fragments are mirrors, then perhaps the lesson was never about them at all. Perhaps it was always about us, because mirrors do not speak, they only reflect. They do not reveal the world, they reveal the one who looks into them. Maybe Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas were not messages in stone, but reflections of what we become when confronted with mystery. Oumuamua showed us suspicion, a shard tumbling strangely, slowing with no tail. Was it probe, or was it rock? We split into camps. We revealed our division. Borisov showed us method, a comet burning with alien chemistry. We studied, compared, catalogued. We revealed our discipline. Atlas showed us imagination, a fragment flashing rhythmically. We wondered about signals, patterns, watchers. We revealed our hunger for story. 3 mirrors, 3 reflections, 3 faces of humanity. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the watchers did not need to send signals. They only needed to hold up a glass, a shard drifting across starlight, a comet whispering of other nurseries, a fragment pulsing faintly in the dark, all mirrors, not windows into them, but into us. And what do we see in those mirrors? A species clever enough to measure, but restless enough to argue, careful enough to catalogue, but reckless enough to imagine, divided, disciplined, curious, all at once. Perhaps that is the real syllabus, to see if we can recognize ourselves in the reflection, to ask not what the fragments mean, but what we mean when we respond to them, because mirrors change nothing except the one who looks, and if that is the lesson, then perhaps we are already learning, not about them but about ourselves. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. That rhythm feels deliberate, but deliberate not to reveal watchers, only to reveal us. And once you look into a mirror, you cannot unsee what stares back. If what unsettles us is not the fragments but the truths they reflect, then maybe the real mystery has always been humanity, because stone and ice do not change. A shard drifts, a comet burns, a fragment pulses. It is what it is. But what we see in them shifts. Each object becomes canvas for our fears, our hopes, our questions. The reflection is not in the sky, it is in us. Oumuamua reflected division, a shard slowing without cause. One group saw sail, another saw rock. The fragment itself said nothing, but in its silence we revealed our tendency to split. Borisov reflected patience, a comet burning with alien chemistry. We measured, compared, studied. The fragment itself said nothing, but in its silence we revealed our discipline. Atlas reflected longing, a fragment flashing rhythmically. Some saw signal, some saw spin. The fragment itself said nothing, but in its silence we revealed our hunger for meaning. 3 reflections, 3 truths, 3 glimpses of ourselves. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps the watchers already know the fragments are mute. They know they say nothing. The purpose is not to deliver information, but to provoke reflection, to let us see ourselves, laid bare in our reactions. And what do those reactions reveal? That we are clever, yes, but restless. That we are patient, but divided. That we are disciplined, but desperate for story. Maybe that is what makes us dangerous, or maybe that is what makes us promising. The reflection can be read either way. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. The rhythm feels like a mirror turning, catching us from every angle, not to reveal what is out there, but to reveal what is here. And once you see yourself in the mirror, you cannot look away. If the fragments are mirrors, then reflection may not be harmless. Reflection may itself be judgment, because to see yourself is one thing, to be seen by another, through that reflection is another. And if the watchers, if they exist, sent us mirrors, then maybe they are not asking what the fragments mean, they are asking what we mean when we answer them. Oumuamua reflected division. We argued rock or sail, probe or chance. Our suspicion was the reply. Borisov reflected patience. We measured carefully, catalogued with care. Our science was the reply. Atlas reflected longing. We imagined signal in its pulse. Our hunger was the reply. 3 reflections, 3 replies, 3 judgments forming, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps every reaction was scored, division, patience, longing, marks on a scale we cannot see. We were not only studying fragments, we were being studied through them. And what does that mean? That our curiosity is measured, that our discipline is measured, that even our disagreements are measured. To them, silence is not absence, it is data. This unsettles us because it means our fate may not be shaped by what we know, but by how we behave. And behavior, unlike science, is not consistent. It is fragile, divided, human, 3 in less than a decade. After billions of stillness, that rhythm feels too sharp, too deliberate to ignore. It feels like a test where the answers are not written in numbers, but in character. And what if the mirror shows them something they do not like? What if the judgment is already made? Silence, in that case, would not be patience. It would be verdict. If the fragments are mirrors, then perhaps they were not even meant for us. Perhaps they were meant for others. Because warnings do not always speak to the one being warned. Sometimes they are placed for passers-by. A mark in the forest that says, "Danger here." A trail of stones that says, "Avoid this place." What if Oumuamua, Borisov and Atlas were not messages for Earth at all, but messages about Earth? Oumuamua reflected our division. We split, argued, filled silence with suspicion. If another civilization was watching, that reflection told them, this species cannot agree. Borisov reflected our patience. We studied, measured, catalogued with care. If another was watching, that reflection told them, this species is disciplined. Atlas reflected our longing. We saw rhythm, imagined signal, whispered of watchers. If another was watching, that reflection told them, this species hungers for meaning. 3 reflections, 3 portraits, 3 notes written not for us, but for an audience elsewhere. Coincidence, or choreography, accident, or design. If design, then perhaps Earth has already been catalogued, not by us, but by others. Each fragment, a line in our description, each reaction, an entry in our file, not a conversation, but a report. A species described in silence, passed along in fragments of stone. And what does that mean? That we may never see the verdict, that the decision may not even belong to us, that the watchers may not be speaking to us, but about us. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of emptiness, enough to build a picture, enough to place a label, and perhaps that label has already been shared, far beyond our reach. If we have been described to others, then perhaps the description was not neutral, perhaps it was warning, because in the cosmos, safety may depend not on curiosity, but on caution. Civilizations that endure may know the danger of revealing too much. They may catalogue others not to celebrate them, but to avoid them. And what if Earth is one of those warnings? Oumuamua showed them our division. We argued, we fractured, we filled silence with suspicion. That might be marked as instability. Borisov showed them our patience. We studied carefully, catalogued precisely. That might be marked as capability. Atlas showed them our longing. We saw rhythm where there may have been none, imagined watchers in silence. That might be marked as restlessness. 3 fragments, 3 reflections, 3 traits, instability, capability, restlessness, coincidence, or choreography, accident, or design. If design, then perhaps those traits are not invitations, but warnings. To others they may say, this world is clever, but divided. This world is capable, but reckless. This world is curious, but hungry. A species to be watched, but not touched. And so the silence becomes heavier. Not emptiness, but decision. Not pause, but barrier. A wall placed not by us, but around us. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. That rhythm feels deliberate, like signals not of greeting but of caution. Stones drifting through space, carrying labels etched in silence. And what if those labels spread farther than we can imagine, passed along like warnings between travelers in the dark? A quiet code. This place is unstable. Keep your distance. We wonder if watchers exist, but maybe they already know us better than we wish. Maybe they do not approach because they have been told not to, and warnings once given are rarely forgotten. If the fragments are warnings, then maybe they are not only to keep others away, maybe they are to keep us inside, because warnings can work in two directions. They can say, do not enter, but they can also say, do not leave. Perhaps Oumuamua, Borisov and Atlas were not barriers for travellers outside, but markers for us, a reminder that our world has already been noticed, already been marked, already been contained. Oumuamua revealed our division, our arguments, our suspicions, our refusal to agree, a sign that we may not be safe to let out. Borisov revealed our capability, our precision, our catalogues, our science, a sign that we may not be harmless. Atlas revealed our longing, our imagination, our hunger for meaning, our restless searching, a sign that we may not be content with silence. 3 fragments, 3 reflections, 3 reasons to confine: coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps the silence around us is not natural emptiness, but boundary, a quarantine drawn not in walls, but in warnings, a way of saying watch them, but do not approach, let them remain inside their cage of sky. The thought unsettles us, because it shifts the story. We are not waiting for contact, we are already contained. The silence is not absence, it is structure, an invisible perimeter around our world. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. Too sharp, too clustered, too deliberate, like reminders, you are not alone, but you are not free. And if that is true, then the fragments are not only visitors, they are signs at the edge of our enclosure. Quiet markers placed so others will know there is life here, but it does not leave, and we, staring upward, may never know if the walls are permanent. If silence is quarantine, then maybe it is not punishment, maybe it is protection, because cages are not always meant to trap the dangerous. Sometimes they are meant to shield the fragile. And what if Earth has been fenced in, not because we are a threat, but because we are vulnerable? Oumuamua showed us anomaly in motion. We noticed, we argued, we revealed our suspicion. That might tell watchers we are clever but uncertain, fragile in our doubt. Borisov showed us anomaly in chemistry. We studied, we measured, we revealed our science. That might tell watchers we are capable but still young, fragile in our reach. Atlas showed us anomaly in rhythm. We wondered, we imagined, we revealed our longing. That might tell watchers we are curious but restless, fragile in our hunger. 3 fragments, 3 signals of fragility, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then maybe silence is a shield, a way of keeping us hidden, contained, safe from the wider forest. Because the forest may be dark, the forest may be full of hunters, the forest may not welcome sparks like ours, and so the silence is not rejection, but protection, a barrier, not to hold us in, but to keep others out. A kindness disguised as absence, a mercy disguised as indifference. This unsettles us differently, because if we are protected, then we are not free. We live inside safety, but safety can also be confinement. Safety can also be isolation. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. It feels too deliberate, too clustered to be chance. Like reminders, stay quiet, stay small, stay safe. And yet, if protection is the purpose, then one day we may outgrow the cage. One day we may step into the forest ourselves, and then silence will break, not because they speak, but because we leave. And the question waiting in that silence is simple. What will meet us when we do? If silence is protection, then the next question is simple and terrifying. Who is protecting us, and from what? Because protection implies danger. A shield is raised because something lurks beyond it. A barrier is built because something must be kept away. And if Earth is under a silence not of our own making, then perhaps it is not only the watchers who exist, but others from whom we must be hidden. Oumuamua revealed our suspicion. We argued over its strange motion. That reply may have been recorded, but perhaps it was also bait, something left for others to see. A marker that said, "This world notices. Keep away." Borisov revealed our science. We catalogued its strange chemistry. That too may have been a signal to others. This world measures. Keep away. Atlas revealed our longing. We saw rhythm, pattern, message. That may have been the clearest warning of all. This world seeks meaning. Keep away. 3 fragments, 3 markers, 3 signs, written not for us, but for anything else that might wander close. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then we are not only being watched, we are being shielded. Our cage is not a prison, but a wall raised against something outside. But what lies beyond the wall? A forest full of sparks like ours, burning and dying in silence. A galaxy of predators waiting for any voice foolish enough to shout. Or something stranger, forces not alive as we know it, but still hostile, still dangerous. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness. The timing feels like a reminder. You are noticed, but you are not safe. Stay quiet, stay small, stay here. And if we are being protected, then the silence is not just cosmic mystery, it is policy, it is choice. Someone has decided for us, not yet. And the hardest truth may be this: protection does not last forever. If silence is protection, then the most unsettling thought is this: protection cannot last forever. Walls fall, shields weaken, even cages, if built as mercy, eventually break. And what happens when ours does? Oumuamua may have been the first reminder, a shard tumbling strangely, slowing when it should not. A sign that someone had drawn our orbit onto their maps, that someone was checking the walls. Borisov may have been the second reminder, a comet rich in alien chemistry, a sign that someone wanted to see how closely we were watching, that someone was testing the gate. Atlas may have been the third reminder, a fragment pulsing rhythmically almost like a beacon, a sign that someone wanted to see how we would react if the silence flickered. 3 reminders, 3 signals that the boundary exists. But boundaries are not eternal, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps we are living in a temporary quarantine, a pause before entry, a stay of contact, a fragile silence bought for reasons we do not understand. But reasons, no matter how noble, do not endure forever. Perhaps one day the protection will lift and the silence will break. Not because we are ready, but because whoever holds the walls decides to lower them. And what waits on the other side? Allies? Hunters? A galaxy indifferent to us? Or something we cannot even imagine? 3 in less than a decade. After billions of stillness, that rhythm feels like countdown as much as curriculum. A a gentle reminder that walls are not permanent, that silence is not guaranteed. And if we have built our sense of safety on silence, then perhaps our safety is already gone, because the wall will fall. The only question is when. If the wall will fall, then perhaps the three visitors were not just lessons. Perhaps they were steps, because patterns are rarely accidents. 3 objects in less than a decade after billions of stillness. Too neat to dismiss, too sharp to ignore. And maybe they were not separate mysteries, but stages of a single unfolding story. Oumuamua arrived first. Its anomaly was motion, a shard tumbling, slowing where it should not. The lesson: you are being noticed. Borisov arrived second. Its anomaly was chemistry, a comet rich in elements not from here. The lesson: you are being compared. Atlas arrived third. Its anomaly was rhythm, a fragment pulsing in silence. The lesson: you are being tested. 3 anomalies, 3 lessons, 3 steps, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps these were not scattered arrivals, but the opening of a countdown. Not in numbers, but in meaning. First awareness, then measure, then response. And what follows response? Contact, silence broken, the wall coming down. The thought unsettles us because it changes the way we see time. We are not drifting in endless emptiness. We may be living inside a schedule, a plan written not in words, but in fragments of stone drifting into our sky. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of nothing. That feels deliberate, like the beginning of something timed, something paced, something meant to build. And if there is a 4th, it may not be subtle, it may not be patient, it may not leave room for argument. Because after the steps, the outcome comes. After the lessons, the test ends. After the countdown, the wall falls. And once it falls, the silence cannot return. If the fragments are a countdown, then perhaps the end is not contact. Perhaps the end is decision, because tests do not exist for their own sake. They end in verdict. A scale tips. A choice is made. And if Oumuamua, Borisov and Atlas were steps in a test, then the silence that follows may not be waiting at all. It may be judgment already begun. Oumuamua was motion. It asked if we would notice an object behaving strangely. We did. Our reply was suspicion. Borisov was chemistry. It asked if we would measure, compare, learn. We did. Our reply was science. Atlas was rhythm. It asked if we would imagine, wonder, see pattern. We did. Our reply was longing. 3 questions, 3 answers, 3 reflections written into the silence. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps those replies were not for us. They were for others. Written down in ledgers we will never see. Passed along through networks we cannot imagine. A portrait of Earth drawn not by our hands, but by our reactions. And what portrait did we draw? Clever, but divided. Patient, but restless. Scientific, but hungry for meaning. Traits that could be promise or warning. The danger is that we do not know what kind of decision follows. Acceptance, quarantine, invitation, rejection. The silence could be any of these. It could already be the outcome. 3 in less than a decade. After billions of stillness, the rhythm feels too sharp, too deliberate, too measured, like marks on a scale, like steps toward a verdict already written. And if it is written, then perhaps we are living inside the consequence now, without even knowing which way the judgment fell. And that may be the strangest silence of all. If the verdict has already been made, then perhaps we are living inside it right now, not waiting for it inside it, because silence itself can be an answer. Not every judgment arrives with thunder. Some arrive softly, quietly, like a door that never opens. And maybe that is the verdict we have been given. Oumuamua showed us division. Our suspicion was written into the silence. Borisov showed us discipline. Our science was written into the silence. Atlas showed us longing. Our hunger for meaning was written into the silence. 3 questions, 3 replies, 3 lines on a record we will never read. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the silence that followed may not be pause, it may be conclusion. The verdict is not contact or answer. The verdict is absence, a decision not to speak, a decision to leave us with our reflections. And if that is true, then the silence is heavier than we thought. Not mystery, but sentence. Not waiting, but outcome. What does that mean for us? That we were measured and found unready? That we were seen and marked unsafe? Or simply that we were noticed and dismissed? 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness, the rhythm feels deliberate. But what if the deliberation ended there? A final mark, a final note, and then silence as verdict. The thought is unsettling because it leaves no appeal. We cannot argue with silence. We cannot protest a door that does not open. We can only live inside it, wondering what judgment we carry, without ever knowing for sure. And maybe that is the hardest truth of all, that silence is not absence but decision. If silence is the verdict, then perhaps it is not rejection. Perhaps it is invitation, an invitation to judge ourselves. Because silence reflects, it forces us inward. Without a voice to answer, we are left to measure our own. And maybe that is the truest test of all. Not what they think of us, but what we think of ourselves when faced with the unknown. Oumuamua asked about motion. We saw anomaly, and we argued. That reflection showed us division. Borisov asked about chemistry. We measured carefully, catalogued with patience. That reflection showed us discipline. Atlas asked about rhythm. We imagined meaning, whispered about signal. That reflection showed us longing. 3 fragments, 3 reflections, 3 truths, division, discipline, longing, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then the silence that follows is not a wall, but a mirror turned back toward us. It asks, is this who you are? Is this who you want to be? Because silence leaves the question open. Silence says, decide for yourselves. If you are divided, heal. If you are disciplined, grow. If you are longing, seek carefully. Silence forces us to choose what reflection we will send back, not just once, but every time we look upward. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness, the rhythm feels less like judgment, more like invitation, an invitation to decide what kind of species we will become before the silence ends. And perhaps that is why the silence stretches, not to keep us out, not to keep others away, but to give us time to see ourselves and to change if we must. Because the hardest lessons are not given by others, they are the ones we set for ourselves. If silence is self-judgment, then maybe it will never break until we change. Because silence is patient. It does not press. It does not demand. It simply waits, stretching across centuries, across millennia, until the one inside it decides to move. And maybe that is the real test. Not whether we can hear a voice in the dark, but whether we can become something worth hearing. Oumuamua showed us suspicion, division written across its strange motion. Borisov showed us patience, discipline written across its alien chemistry. Atlas showed us longing, imagination written across its rhythm. 3 fragments, 3 truths, 3 reminders, coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then maybe these were not lessons from outside, but warnings from within, reminders of what we are, what we lack, what we must face before silence will lift. Division must be healed, patience must be deepened, longing must be tempered with care, and until then, silence will remain. 3 in less than a decade. After billions of emptiness, that rhythm feels deliberate, like footsteps coming closer. But maybe they are not footsteps at all. Maybe they are echoes, reminding us that time is not infinite, that change must come before the wall falls. This unsettles us, because it makes the burden heavier. We cannot wait for others to decide. The silence will not end until we decide, until we transform into something that can meet it without fracturing. And if we do not, then perhaps silence will stretch forever, not because no one is there, but because no one will answer until we are ready. And readiness may not be about science. It may be about who we are when the sky watches. If silence will never break until we change, then maybe that is the truest wonder of all, that the sky has been speaking, not with words but with quiet patterns, that 3 fragments in less than a decade could be enough to shift how we see ourselves. Oumuamua was motion. It showed us our division. Borisov was chemistry. It showed us our discipline. Atlas was rhythm. It showed us our longing. 3 mirrors, 3 lessons, 3 whispers. Coincidence or choreography, accident or design. If design, then perhaps silence is not punishment, not rejection, not even protection. Perhaps it is gift, a gift of time, a gift of space to grow, a gift of unanswered questions, so that we might learn to answer for ourselves. Because silence is not empty, it is alive with meaning. It holds the weight of possibility. It waits, patient and unhurried, as if the universe has already decided, you will answer your own questions first. And maybe that is why the fragments came when they did, not before, not after, now, in our time, in our sky, to remind us that billions of years of stillness can end suddenly, to remind us that wonder is still possible, to remind us that we are not finished yet. 3 in less than a decade, after billions of stillness, a rhythm too perfect to ignore, a coincidence too sharp to dismiss. So we stand under the sky, wondering if the silence